Islam and greetings to you all. I rise giving all praise to Allah and high honors to his prophet, noble Drew Ali. I extend those honors to the forerunner and harbinger, Marcus Mosiah Garvey, who did stir up the nation. I extend honors to all true and divine prophets, and I extend honors to you all, for when man honors man, he honors his father God Allah. This video presentation is done out of necessity so that you may understand why it is that the so-called black people never have nor ever will receive reparations. It starts simply with the name that the people choose to call themselves, which is black. I will begin with an excerpt from the Moorish literature titled, "What Shall We Call Him?" The matter of the various names given to these 22 million people with all colors of every race of the globe was an act of European psychology. They gave him a name, then defined it as something inferior to theirs. White, they defined as a color of purity. Black, they say, represents everything of evil. The Negro, as they were called in this nation, have no nation to which they might look with pride. Their history starts with the close of the Civil War, or more properly with his being forced to serve someone else. Thus, he is separated from the illustrious history of his forefathers, who were the founders of the first civilization of the old world. This matter should be looked into with the hope of correcting it. This is a picture of myself, Sheikh Wayel. Notice that I have on a black leather jacket and a black fez. Notice that my shirt is also black. Notice that my beard, mustache, and eyebrows are black as well. But notice that my skin is of a brownish hue, and that this is the reason why you can see my mustache and beard and discern me from my fez, shirt, and leather. Why would I call myself black then? Why do our people blindly use terms like black of skin when there are no such people on the planet or in existence that has or ever had black skin? It was the Europeans who first called us black people. There is not one contemporary source that says we ever called ourselves black people prior to contact with the pale-skinned nations of Europe. We have accepted this dead term, but we have never descended from a nation called black. Kemet means black land as it pertains to the Nile region and the people that lived in that particular region of Egypt. So that excuse that Kemet means black and so we are a black people is a dead argument. Egypt was only one of our great empires, only one. It was not the start of our great empires. For many thousands of years before Egypt was established, we had many nations and empires, and not near one of them were named black. Now, I want to bring you to Federal Directive 15, which was adopted on May 12, 1977. This is the listings of the 5 racial categories recognized in the United States today. They explain to you that these classifications should not be interpreted as being scientific or anthropological in nature, meaning it does not care how you look or what your phenotype is or what haplogroup pool you are in at this current moment or the one you came out of. These are racial classifications according to the United States standard. The basic racial and ethnic categories for federal statistics and program administrative reporting are defined as follows. American Indian or Alaska Native, a person having origins in any of the original peoples of North America, and who maintains cultural identification through tribal affiliation or community recognition. Asian or Pacific Islander, a person having origins in any of the original peoples of the Far East, Southeast Asia, the Indian subcontinent, or the Pacific Islands. This area includes, for example, China, India, Japan, Korea, the Philippine Islands, and Samoa. Black, a person having origins in any of the black racial groups of Africa. So wait, there are different black racial groups in Africa? I thought there was only one black race. See how they have tricked you? Notice they named no nations. Hispanic, a person of Mexican, Puerto Rican, Cuban, Central or South American or other Spanish culture or origin, regardless of race. White, a person having origins in any of the original peoples of Europe, North Africa, or the Middle East. Now my question becomes, how many so-called white people do you know that has origins in any of the original peoples of North Africa? Notice, for the definition of black, it says a person having origins in any of the black racial groups of Africa. Do you not see the trickery? You see, this is a caste system borrowed from India, with white being the highest class and black being the lowest class. It has absolutely nothing to do with your skin tone, as there are no people with black skin, just like there are no people with white skin. This is a socio-political construct that has been accepted into the minds of some of our brightest. We contract ourselves into being black with the signing of the birth certificate and other documents like the Social Security applications. We are truly Moors that were on this land before the Europeans got here. This I will prove forthcoming. This was North Africa during the slave trade. Notice the slave ports. Since the Europeans have divvied up Africa into their own real estate, this is what is designated as North Africa today. Notice the green areas. This was a very shrewd move that was done to disconnect the Berbers or Moors of North Africa with those Moors on the southwestern portions of what is designated as North Africa today. This is why Prophet Drew Ali states in our divine constitution and bylaws that the Moorish Americans are descendants of the ancient Moabites whom inhabited the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa, of which I unequivocally proved in my last video. He did this so that all of our people, no matter what tribe they descend from, what nation they were captured during the slave trade, etc., can proclaim their nationality, because in this day and time, we have literally contracted ourselves into slavery, and there is only one way out, and that is through the Moorish Science Temple of America. In the Negro laws of South Carolina of 1839, it says that the term Negro will only be confined to slave Africans, meaning ancient Berbers and their descendants. So when you hear brothers saying that, oh, I come from the Fulani, or I come from the Ife and other non-Islamic tribes, do know that these indeed are Berber tribes. When the federal description says that white is also of the original peoples of North Africa, they too are speaking about the Moors over here who are falsely calling themselves black. There is no such thing as a black or white people. You never hear Chinese or Japanese people screaming, yellow power, or American Indians screaming, red power. This is because they know that they descend from nations and tribes, not colors. Color in law means false, and something colored is that which is painted, stained, varnished, or dyed. Are you that? Do you descend from that? Notice that for the Native Americans, they did not use red as a classification. Notice for the Asian or Pacific Islanders, Chinese, Japanese people, etc., they did not use yellow as a classification. But only so-called black and so-called white people adhere to these false color-coded titles today. It has nothing to do with skin color. It has everything to do with status. Now let us show and prove. Mustafa Hefni, a businessman from Detroit, an immigrant from Africa, namely Egypt, working towards naturalization as a U.S. citizen, heard that the Small Business Association was granting loans to black-owned businesses. He applied and was turned down on the grounds that he was not black. The Small Business Administration's explanation, according to the Detroit office, was that black loans are intended only for those whose ancestors suffered under slavery and Jim Crow, and that he could not simply waltz in from Africa and claim to be black. Hefni demanded a formal hearing and lost. The excuse changed, however. The court ruled that federal regulations forbid immigrants from North African nations, including Egypt, from calling themselves black, no matter what they look like. He lost his appeal, and because of the federal guidelines, he was still ruled to be white. Now let us look at the flip side of this equation. In 1988, a 39-year-old Mary Christine Walker, a Denver school teacher with a fair or European complexion, green eyes, light brown hair, claimed on her job application to be black. Her prospective employer obtained Ms. Walker's birth certificate, found her listed there as white, and accused her of lying to take advantage of minority hiring policies. Walker promptly filed suit in state district court. Walker was born a white child, as was stated upon her birth certificate, but in adolescence found herself more at home among so-called black people. She joined the black church and black social clubs. Her friends and boyfriends were black. She claimed to be black despite her very European looks. She sued and won. The school board appealed and she won again, this time with increased damages levied against the school. The Colorado Supreme Court was apparently persuaded by the large number of influential so-called black leaders, politicians, ministers, etc., who came to testify that Mary was truly a member of the African American community. On September 6, 1989, Judge John Brooks Jr. also ordered the State Department of Vital Statistics to issue the woman a new birth certificate. Do understand, this is why they keep people like Farrakhan and Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson as your quote-unquote black leaders. These people represent the leaders of the slave caste. And so every time there is an injustice done to one of the slave caste, so-called black people that is, this is who they hoist up in front of you because you too think that you are black. And this is why you will receive no remedy from this nation with these men at the helm. Now let us review the Dred Scott case so that you may understand why so-called black people will never be considered whole people upon this land and why they won't ever receive reparations. In March of 1857, the United States Supreme Court, led by Chief Justice Roger B. Taney, declared that all blacks, slaves as well as free, were not and could never become citizens of the United States. The court also declared the 1820 Missouri Compromise unconstitutional, thus permitting slavery in all of the country's territories. The case before the court was that of Dred Scott versus Sanford. Dred Scott, a slave who had lived in the free state of Illinois and the free territory of Wisconsin before moving back to the slave state of Missouri, had appealed to the Supreme Court in hopes of being granted his freedom. Taney, a staunch supporter of slavery and intent on protecting Southerners from Northern aggression, wrote in the court's majority opinion that because Scott was black, he was not a citizen and therefore had no right to sue. The framers of the Constitution, he wrote, believed that blacks had no rights which the white man was bound to respect, and that the Negro might justly and lawfully be reduced to slavery for his benefit. He was brought and sold and treated as an ordinary article of merchandise and traffic, i.e. property, wherever profit could be made by it. Referring to the language in the Declaration of Independence that includes the phrase, all men are created equal, Taney reasoned that it is too clear for dispute that the enslaved African race were not intended to be included and formed no part of the people who framed and adopted this declaration. For this reason, Dred Scott was not recognized as a citizen, and so he had no rights that the Europeans were bound to respect. He recognized his own self as a Negro/black man, and thus there was no remedy for him. The laws of the land forbid it. This was contracted into the Constitution of the United States. The original 13th Amendment with 20 sections at Section 12 reads, "The traffic in slaves with Africa is hereby forever prohibited on pain of death and the forfeiture of all the rights and property of persons engaged therein, and the descendants of Africans shall not be citizens." It was later changed to read, "Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction." You see, Section 1 of that 13th Amendment is written in what is known as legalese. They got you to contract yourself into slavery by signing birth documents that declared that you were black, and or the child that you were signing the certificate for is black. This is called voluntary slavery. It is probably the greatest trick the devil ever pulled. I will touch on this a little later in this presentation. Remember, Abraham Lincoln himself was a lawyer and thus knew just how to keep you enslaved with certain forms of legalese. In a 1967 interview, a civil rights activist by the name of Charles Greenlee stated that if we don't stop producing, meaning making babies, they are going to kill us or grant us full citizenship. So even at this time in the 60s, when the whole civil rights movement was going on, the so-called black or Negro knew then that they were not full citizens, as you are not now. You were only incorporated as a citizen under the 14th Amendment. You were never made citizens of this nation under the constitutional standards, but this is by your own doing. Under the 14th Amendment, everybody is a legal or juristic person, which means that Walmart, McDonald's, your big oil companies, etc. have the same exact rights as you do. But these are only corporate fictions, and to some extent, so are you. Prophet Drew Ali informed us that the 14th and 15th Amendment was not necessary for the salvation of our people and citizens alike. He knew this way back then. Most of your sovereign citizen and more patriot groups have just really found out about this since the early 1990s and the early 2000s. It was the US's own president, Rutherford B. Hayes, that said, "This is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people no longer. It is a government of corporations, by corporations, and for corporations." That says it all. It was Prophet Noble Drew Ali who came and brought to us a nationality upon this land for the first time since 1774, when our fezzes, turbans, and our religion was stripped from us on this land. Some quote-unquote black groups espouse that we were here as slaves for 400 years, but they have no proof of such a claim. This is just another falsity that we have come to accept just so that we can make ourselves fit into a biblical passage that had nothing to do with our people in the context that it was written. We were free upon this land and had large Moorish communities. These communities are never mentioned in your history books. The records here prove that we were here. Our fezzes and turbans were removed from us in 1774, and in 1779 we were legally branded Negroes, blacks, and coloreds.
Divine Prophet, Prophet Noble Dred Ali, the founder of the Moorish Scientific America. Now, we are here on this location to put the issue of nationality in a historical perspective. Question 85 of the Quran Questions for Moorish Americans states, name some of the marks that were put upon the Moors of Northwest by the European nations in the year of 1774. The answer is Negro, black, colored, and Ethiopia. Now these are Quran questions. What does our Quran speak to this issue? We read in chapter 47 of the Moorish Holy Quran, Egypt, the capital empire of the dominion of Africa. Instructions 15 through 17. The time has come when every nation must worship under its own vine and fig tree, and every tongue must confess his own. Through sin and disobedience, every nation has suffered slavery due to the fact that they honor not the creed and principles of their forefathers. That is why the nationality of the Moors was taken away from them in 1774, and the word Negro, black, and colored was given to the Asiatics of America who were of Moorish descent, because they honored not the principles of their mother and father and strayed after the gods of Europe, of whom they knew nothing. Now, after reading the prophet's words, why do we find ourselves standing in front of Carpenter's Hall on this date? These European nations or colonies convened here, right here, at Carpenter's Hall in 1774. Now the question must be, why did the European nations convene here in 1774? One primary reason why they convened here is that the European nations was here in response to the British passing of many laws known as the Intolerable Acts. They were forming a united front against King George III of England. In addition to forming a united front against King George III of England, the European nations or colonies agreed to strip the Moors of their nationality and birthrights. Therefore, the colonists wanted to justify the institution of perpetual enslavement of the Moorish inhabitants and population. Now, I have read the journals of the Continental Congress, and they are the records of the daily proceedings of the Congress as kept by the office of its secretary, Charles Thompson. The journals were printed contemporaneously in different editions and in several subsequent editions. None of these editions, however, included the secret journals, which were confidential sections of the records which were not published until the year of 1821. This complete edition, it was published by the Library of Congress from 1904 to 1937. Remember, the prophet told us all the secrets have been freed. Understand, Moors, that these secret journals were published during the time of our holy and divine prophet Noble Dred Ali. And I have actually here a few pages of the journals of the First Continental Congress in the year of 1774. Now you can look it up for yourself. And what you will find is the records blatantly, large sections taken out. Now we gotta ask ourselves, what were they trying to hide?
Right, that's right.
Large sections. I mean, blatantly. You can see it's obviously. Large sections removed from the journals of the First Continental Congress in the year of 1774. Now keep in mind, this country's legislators would master the careful manipulation of laws and legal jargon. This was a necessary tool and skill for legitimizing the blatant violation of this country's fight for freedom. The use of the terms Negro, Black, Colored, Quadroon, etc. would be employed with legal precision. A mark is a name or other device placed on merchandise to signify ownership. It is a brand. It is a label. Well, one may be prompted to ask, well, what is the difference between the dates of 1774 and 1779? In 1779, these marks were placed upon us and there were legally identification for slaves. Slaves were fallen under the primary designations of Black, Colored, and Negro, which were references to persons legally transformed into property. The official utilization of legal terminology played a significant role in the oppression of Moors of America. Official nomenclature illustrates a person's legal and social status in the United States of America. In the book entitled The Name Negro, its origin and evil use, it states, the important thing about a name is the impression which it makes in the minds of others and the reaction which it invokes through operation of love, of association, of ideas.
Now to the issue of reparations. First, let us look at the definition of reparations. Reparation, repairing or keeping in repair. The act of making amends, offering expiation, or giving satisfaction for a wrong or injury. Something done or given as amends or satisfaction. The payment of damages, indemnification, specifically compensation in money or materials payable by a defeated nation for damages to or expenditures sustained by another nation as a result of hostilities with the defeated nation, usually used in a plural. Do understand this fact. In a legal context, only nations can be remunerated for wrongs done to them, being that black people, as they call themselves, admit to having no national descent because they cling to the word black, which is the same exact name as a Negro, of which these names allude to slavery. They will never receive reparations. This is why Prophet Drew Ali did what he did by making us a nation within a nation on this land and said, the European is going to have to pay our people off for the work that they did in slavery and pay off in compound interest. This is the reason why Prophet Drew Ali incorporated the Moorish Science Temple of America. Legal fictions cannot communicate with flesh and blood, and thus they have to have representatives. Rutherford B. Hayes proved this to you. Only corporations, through their representatives, can communicate with other corporations through their representatives. And the United States is the biggest corporation in the world, and the Moorish Science Temple of America was established as a corporation to do business with other corporations. Our reparation case will come through the Moorish Science Temple of America, the only place where one can lawfully claim his nationality as a Moorish American and nowhere else. Now let us look at some of the most well-known reparations cases. In 2001, the United States paid $56 million to 34 of 64 Seminole tribes of Oklahoma, minus their quote-unquote black tribes. That became the trend, that if you want reparations, you must get rid of all of your Negroes or blacks. The United States in 1990 paid $1.2 billion or $20,000 apiece to Japanese Americans. That's about 600,000 Japanese people that received $20,000 apiece for injustices done to them by the United States. Just imagine how much they owe us, but you will receive nothing until you drop the dead black status and become whole, become a nation again by proclaiming your nationality as a Moorish American. Austria, 1990, $25 million was paid to the Holocaust survivors on Jewish claims against Austria. You see, the Jews did not get their reparations until their state was well established. They used their Bible to take Palestine in 1948 under the British Mandate for Palestine. It is said that Prophet Drew Ali too was given a mandate for this land at the 6th Annual Conference of the Americas in 1928. You can read more about this in my book, Noble Drew Ali, and the Moorish Science Temple of America, the movement that started it all. Here are some other nations that received reparations. Now, I want to bring you to an article from the Huffington Post from May 13th of last year. It is headlined, Reparations, Is President Obama Duping the African American Community? The article reads, did you know part of the stimulus package President Barack Obama signed in February called for nearly $200 million to be distributed to Philippine veterans who fought alongside U.S. soldiers in World War II? Did you know President Obama also signed a measure in 2009 to pay Native Americans $3.4 billion? If President Obama can quietly provide Filipino soldiers and Native Americans back pay for their mistreatment, why can't he produce dollars for African Americans whose forefathers endured bitter cruelties during slavery? The answer is quite simple. You have been cut off from being a nation, Moab, so there is no recourse for you. This is what your reparations is. A statue of Dr. Martin Luther King. This is the king of black history. Black history officially starts in 1779, and that is why they only show you slavery documentaries and Rosa Parks and civil rights movement during their concocted Black History Month. Those movements have done absolutely nothing for the condition of our people in the United States right now. It is time to bring you now to the Treaty of Peace and Friendship between the United States and Morocco. This is the treaty that the Europeans thought they were signing, but would later find out that it was merely a 50-year mandate. Prophet Drew Ali told the Moors, the Europeans went to the Moroccan government and asked for permission to come over here to develop this land. They were given a 50-year mandate to do so. Then the Europeans went to an old sheik and asked him to give them some people to help them to develop this land. The sheik told them to take those Moors because they're not going to do anything. This is the Moorish Sultan Sidi Muhammad III, who sealed the Europeans' fate with this particular treaty. I want to bring you to the diplomatic correspondence that was recorded in the congressional journals pertaining to the treaty. These can be found upon the website avalon.law.yale.edu. You will need to find the Barbary Treaties menu and then click on Hunter Miller's Notes. This correspondence is taken from Tahir Finish, diplomatic liaison of Morocco, and Thomas Barclay of England, who was the diplomatic liaison for the United States of America. Thomas Barclay would say in this diplomatic correspondence, the original of the declaration made by Mr. Finish could not be placed in the same book with the treaty sealed by the emperor, the Moorish forms not permitting it. I posted this portion of the diplomatic correspondence for a reason. You see, the Sultan's words and his seal was like that of the Prophet Muhammad himself. The Sultans of Morocco claimed direct lineal descent from Prophet Muhammad. The United States were desperately trying to get another article added to that specific treaty. When the U.S. went back to renew the treaty, they noticed something horribly wrong. The diplomatic notes read, as was reported from Morocco some 50 years later, the treaty, it will be observed, being sealed by the emperor according to the diplomatic customs observed in this empire, bears the form of a grant. Hence, it would be out of rule to deface the original with my signature or seal. For this reason, Thomas Barclay, during the negotiations of the initial treaty, had this to say: I was asked to sign an acceptation of the articles on the part of the United States, but as the treaty was not drawn up in the form expected, I excused myself, without, however, giving any offense, referring Mr. Finish to Congress and the ministers. You see, Barclay knew something was up, and he left the signing of the treaty to Thomas Jefferson and Quincy Adams. The diplomatic notes themselves proves that this was not a treaty, but that it was in the form of a grant, just as Prophet Drew Ali has stated to us all of those years ago, because this land too was of the dominion of Morocco. Why else would the sons of Europe travel all the way across the Atlantic, risk death by the Moorish corsairs, pirates, just to get recognition from Morocco as a nation? Think this over, you Moors. The United States would hire a man by the name of Christian Schnook Hergranji, who was a Dutch scholar that had mastered the Arabic language and was devoutly studious of the traditions of the Mohammedans. He was pegged to translate the treaty and its intent. This was his observation as given to the U.S. Council. He states, in the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, and there is no might nor power but in God, the great, the high. From the servant of God, Muhammad, son of Abdullah, may God bestow his favor upon him. Amen. Seal. To the great one of the American states, Estados Americanos, the President, peace be on those who follow the right guidance, i.e. the Mohammedan religion. To come to the point, your letter has reached us, and also have reached us the articles of the Treaty of Peace which you have sent us, and we are with you on terms of complete truce and peace. We have now written what you wanted us to write to Tunis and Tripoli, and all that you have asked from us shall be fulfilled, if God please. Greetings. Written in the middle in the month Du al-Qa'ada Zul-Qa'ada of the year 2 and 200,000. Dr. Schnook Hergranji makes also the following comment on the letter. Placing the seal at the head of the letter denotes great superiority and rank of the writer in comparison with that of the person to whom the letter is addressed. The great one of is the title by which infidel rulers are addressed in letters from the Prophet, meaning Muhammad. The greeting formula, peace be on those who follow the right guidance, is the classical one to be addressed to unbelievers, implying that they are not worthy of greeting. So as you can clearly see, the Sultan of Morocco, this Moor, used the very Levitical laws that were used to bound up the Moors for thousands of years from Canaan throughout Africa and all the way to the United States to bound up the sons of Europe, who thought that they were signing a treaty but were actually signing an Islamic land grant known as an Inam, and that they were only given 50 years to be here, just as the Prophet Drew Ali, again who was right about our history, had stated. The Levitical law at Leviticus 25:10 and 25:13 reads, and ye shall hallow the 50th year, and proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. It shall be a jubilee unto you, and ye shall return every man unto his possession, and ye shall return every man unto his family. In the year of this jubilee ye shall return every man unto his possession. This provision was also inscribed upon the Liberty Bell, which reads, "Proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof." It was Prophet Drew Ali who knew this, and this is why he went to the Conference of the Americas in 1928 to reclaim back that which was ours, our nationality, our birthright, our religion, which he modified for our benefit, and the title to our vast estate. You truly do not know what you have. You see, you are Moors. You are not Negroes, blacks, colored people, or African Americans, because those names allude to slavery and they do not bear a national descent. Those names are socio-political constructs, and nothing good has come from our people on this land under that dead designation. It is time to proclaim your nationality as a Moorish American and worship under your own vine and fig tree. Nigerian American, Liberian American, etc. These are national designations. Nigerian and Liberian Americans do not call themselves African Americans, as that is a continent, not a nation. Moorish American is a legal designation, and it is federally recognized on this land as an act instituted by Prophet Drew Ali. We will find proof of this claim at House Resolution 75 of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, April 17, 1933, where we read, "Many sons and daughters of that proud and handsome race which inspired the architecture of Northern Africa and carried into Spain the influence of its artistic temperaments have become citizens of this nation. In the city of Philadelphia, there exists a Moorish American society made up of Moors who have found here the end of their quest for a home, and of the children of those who journeyed here from the plains of Morocco. This society has done much to bring about a thorough absorption by these people of those principles which are necessary to make them good American citizens. These Moorish Americans have since been here missed the use of the titles and name annexations that were so familiar at home and which are used in accordance with the doctrines of the religious faith to which they are adherents. Therefore be it resolved that this House commends the Moorish American Society of Philadelphia for the efficient service it has rendered the nation in bringing about a speedy and thorough Americanization of these former Moors. Remember, they were branded Negroes, blacks, and coloreds in 1779. And that in accordance with the fullest right of religious independence guaranteed every citizen, we recognize also the right of these people to use the name affixes El or Ali or Bey or any other prefix or suffix to which they have heretofore been accustomed to use, or which they may hereafter acquire the right to use. On the question, will the House adopt the resolution? It was adopted May 4th, 1933. You see, the Moors were living on this land free up until the year 1774, when our fezzes and turbans were removed from us. The only people considered property before that time were those Muslims who were captured and sold into slavery on this land, which only numbered about 300,000. If you watch most of the movies on slavery, the captured slaves were almost always Islamic, and this is why Prophet Drew Ali was the first to bring Islam back to us on this land in 1913. He later modified it back into a form of the old-time religion of Islam in 1927 and 1928. That Islam that is before Prophet Muhammad. That Islam of Prophet Muhammad now became Aryanized and Christianized, and Prophet Drew Ali called that form of Islam hocus pocus and said that it will not work for our people in this day and time. Here are the records of King George II from 1748. These are the laws of Virginia, and proves that Moors were indeed free upon this land, and most were already natives when the Europeans got here, as was noted by Columbus in his journals. When Prophet Drew Ali came back to America from the East in 1913, he proclaimed, "I came just in time." We now bring you to Edward Mandell House and his conversation that he had with Woodrow Wilson in the same very interesting year of 1913 about plans to register every man, woman, and child's biological property with the state. He said, "Very soon, every American will be required to register their biological property in a national system designed to keep track of the people, and that will operate under the ancient system of pledging. By such methodology, we can compel people to submit to our agenda, which will affect our security as a chargeback for our fiat paper currency. Every American will be forced to register or suffer being unable to work and earn a living. They will be our chattel, and we will hold the security interest over them forever by operation of the law merchant under the scheme of secure transactions. Americans, by unknowingly or unwittingly delivering the bills of lading to us, will be rendered bankrupt and insolvent, forever to remain economic slaves through taxation, secured by their pledges. They will be stripped of their rights and given a commercial value designed to make us a profit, and they will be none the wiser, for not one man in a million could ever figure our plans, and if by accident one or two should figure it out, we have in our arsenal plausible deniability. After all, this is the only logical way to fund government, by floating liens and debt to the registrants in the form of benefits and privileges. This will inevitably reap to us huge profits beyond our wildest expectations and leave every American a contributor to this fraud, which we will call social insurance. Today it is called Social Security. Without realizing it, every American will insure us for any loss we may incur, and in this manner, every American will unknowingly be our servant. However begrudgingly, the people will become helpless and without any hope for their redemption, and we will employ the high office of the president of our dummy corporation to foment this plot against America. Is this not what is happening today? Have they not perfected a system called Social Security that they use to track you wherever you are? This was a seed that they planted those many years ago, and that seed has been developed into a full-grown tree of blind deceit and deception placed upon the ever unsuspecting masses. The birth certificate is the bill of lading that is spoken about in the above quote by Mr. House. The birth certificate contract is the key to this whole mess. This is why, by some accounts, the prophet urged us not to throw away our birth certificates because we were going to get paid through them. Here is a standard copy of the birth certificate contract. It reads, "Signing this form is voluntary. However, since signing this form has legal consequences, you may want to consult an attorney before you sign." Remember, the 13th Amendment was written in legalese and stated that only involuntary servitude would not be permitted, but it said nothing about voluntary servitude. We have volunteered servitude by contracting ourselves in a dead status, i.e. black, that was solely branded upon our people. And we wonder, after all of these years, why we as a people cannot get out of the muck and the mire. It is because of our own doing. The number one legal maxim in law is ignorance of the law is no excuse. But the truth is here now. And when the will of man and the will of the law are one, the resurrection is a fact. So it is evidently clear, so-called black man, so-called Negro, so-called colored and African American, that your citizenship is based only upon corporate greed. And so you are kept in the most deplorable conditions because you never received the proper education on the civic side of American life, and thus you accept the program of nothingness given to you. This is why our religious institution of the Moorish Science Temple of America is so vitally important. We teach those things necessary in building better citizens and things vital to lawful and legal matters, and our religious doctrine as well, which does not read like other religious doctrines that are full of angry, jealous, and vengeful gods who shows favoritism to one portion of humanity over another. Our religious doctrine is a literal self-help guide, and I challenge you all to read it and come away with something different. Religion is a big part of the political cog on this land. If you do not believe me, watch this upcoming election and how the candidates court the evangelical Christian vote. That will be a catchphrase used all throughout the election. There is but one thing left for you all to do, and that is to proclaim your nationality as Moorish Americans so that you can have full citizenship in this country. Our organization, the Moorish Science Temple of America, is the only organization that can grant you this. Buyer beware. There are many fake Moorish groups who claim to be councils and have nationality packages and a host of other elaborate schemes like the promise that they can dissolve your birth certificate and social security contracts and the likes, but they are all fleecers with one purpose, and that is to rob you. Prophet Drew Ali said, if you are not careful, your own brother will put you right back into slavery. If you are interested in joining the Moorish Science Temple of America and proclaiming your nationality, please contact me here or at my email address at lordabba@gmail.com. This is the only way we will be able to receive reparations, and that is as a nation of people like other nations have received. I will let Saint Garvey Bey, aka Marcus Garvey, finish this off.
You race of cowards! You race of imbeciles! You race of good for nothing! If you cannot do what other men have done, what other nations have done, what other races have done, then you have better die!